www.offthecorner.net. You're watching the FACT Project. And FACT is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African-Centered Thought. The goal here on the FACT Project is to convey some facts and some information to members of our community. We have slated to join us today Brother Kelechi. He's backstage making arrangements to get on right now. Before we bring Brother Kelechi on, I do want to make a few announcements if I could. We still have the, here on the FACT Project, we like to engage in activism as opposed to just having these really great conversations and informing everybody. We'd like to give information, and we hope people want to get active and do some things that will help to transform the condition of the group. The first line of business, I guess, is the Netflix campaign that we've been on for a matter of weeks now. If you've been watching this for any number of weeks, you will see that we have launched a campaign against Netflix, and we're going to keep our foot on the gas. There seems to be some naysayers that think that it's a waste of time, but in a capitalist system, spending is what drives the economy. And so if you want to punish corporations, then you will have to withdraw your participation as it relates to patronizing those corporations. So the campaign has been launched against Netflix because of their animated reboot of Good Times, which is a very stereotypical and reprehensible portrayal of Black people. No other group of people would allow themselves to be disrespected in this way in any facet of media. And so there has been a campaign on change.org. You can sign a campaign on change.org. I think you could put Good Times in the search there and you can find that. So you can sign the campaign at change.org. There has been an open letter written by James McIntosh of CMOTAP, which is the Committee to Eliminate Media Offensive to African People. That open letter is on offthecorner.net. That website again is offthecorner.net. You can copy paste that and put that in an email, or you can copy paste that and print it and put it in the regular mail, but definitely get that over to Netflix. Next order of business is the campaign to help Brother Dhoruba bin Wahad, who is suffering from a major illness right now. Brother Dhoruba bin Wahad is a former Black Panther, former political prisoner, and he continues to be a long-distance revolutionary for our people. Brother Ajay Tayemba of Harlem Liberation School has started the GoFundMe to support Brother Dhoruba bin Wahad. That's in the chat. I just posted that in the chat. So anyone wishing to support Brother Dhoruba can do so by going to the GoFundMe link that's in the chat. And, I donated my share of money. So I'm not just on here giving information or just saying stuff. I'm actually following through and showing and proving. Not only that, Sister Marilyn Mosby, who was a state's attorney in the state of Maryland, is also fighting a major situation. She was found guilty of using her own retirement funds to support herself and her family. I think the system came down on Sister because she exonerated 13 wrongfully convicted Black men, and she also prosecuted killer cops. So anyone wanting to support Sister Marilyn Mosby can do so by going to GoFundMe, and information is there. Either way, we have with us, joining us again for the second time, Brother Kelechi from Appeal Inc. Peace and Black Power, Brother Kelechi. Thank you for joining us on the FACT Project today again, brother.
Hey, greetings, brother. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us.
Oh, most definitely. Now, I mentioned a few campaigns that we're on. Did you catch the Netflix animated reboot of Good Times?
I saw that it was happening. I mean, I don't know if it's actually showing now, but I mean, obviously, I'm not watching that nonsense. But I did see a promo or some sort of it. Yeah, it's some shocking foolishness. Yeah, it's unimaginable that any Black people would have anything to do with anything like that for any amount of money, and I can't really. I mean, even if I was a white person, I would be ashamed to watch something like that. Hard to imagine that scenario, but even in that scenario, yeah, I would be uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to watch, just to Yeah, especially considering how important Good Times was, how symbolic it was, the family with the brother, and the sister, the brother be on the show for that reason of elevating that image of black families. It's unconscionable, really, that such a thing would be, and of course, you make it a cartoon implicitly, even though these days we know that that's not the case. It's more targeted towards younger people, but it's definitely not for young people. It's not for anybody actually. So yeah, I saw that nonsense. It's terrible.
Now, Brother Kelechi, if it was any other group of people, what do you think the response would have been?
Well, it wouldn't have been any other group of people. I mean, black people are, I mean, from the founding of this country, we've been the capital. I mean, we are the capital and capitalist.
Mm.
They make their money off our bodies all the time. There's no comparable, no other people. There's nothing to compare it with. So can't imagine. I mean, who would it be? So no, that wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for us. Because there's enough of us that don't understand that for it to happen. What I mean by that is um, there are enough of us who don't have the visceral reaction you and I have to something like that, for it to be fathomable. I don't even know who their target audience is exactly.
Mm.
Exactly, I don't know who they're targeting. Somebody got to watch it. Who they expecting to watch it? I mean, maybe yeah. I mean, it's unimaginable that any black person, of good sense would watch that. But the truth is, a lot of our folks don't have good sense, and they will find it entertaining. I mean, you got the whole music industry of that same ilk, right? And folks, play it at children's birthday parties. So, unfortunately, there is an audience for that, but not of right-minded people. And yeah, it's disturbing.
You talked last time when you were on about some of the music. You mentioned music. You talked about some of the music that you came up on. And you mentioned like X Clan, Jungle Brothers, Brand Nubian, Poor Righteous Teachers, Public Enemy, and so forth. And you said that you still listen to all of that sort of stuff on the cell phone. The music that we listened to when we were coming up, it affirmed us and gave us confidence. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's not something that's appreciated enough. There's errors and cycles, and we know how it goes. The Black Power generation, they, there was obviously a global movement actually, but a social movement. It wasn't like everybody was conscious. They may have looked like they were, but they weren't. It was just zeitgeist, right? It was just they were surrounded by all these things that are happening between the Vietnam War and the liberation movements on the continent and other Cuba and all these things were going on at the same time. It was just that fervor at that time. We didn't have we had obviously we had apartheid, but really the movement that drove the consciousness for the masses of my generation, I would say, was the music. It was hip hop. I mean, it was Public Enemy. It was KRS-One. I mean, it was what we danced to. It wasn't like a class you were going to. It was when you went out to party. That's what you listened to. So it was part of our lifestyle to be hearing that conscious. You must learn that education, and which of course was supported by other entertainment and books that became popular. Obviously, one book that comes up every time I talk to somebody, of our generation, in terms of how they came to consciousness, books they read. One of the first three books is always autobiography of Malcolm X. I mean, it's always there, of course, there are others, like ISIS papers and so on and so forth, and Tony Browder's Browder Files and many, many others. But that was all part of that, that environment, that community, that generation, that collective appreciation of who you are. The return to appreciation of blackness. We grew up in a golden age of sorts, and it's so difficult to see what's happening now with my children's generation and what they're listening to and what they're comfortable listening to. I mean, things you couldn't imagine somebody even saying, on some dirty record that you couldn't play anywhere. They're playing it on the main stations on every on rotation. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy how bad things have gotten, and it's not just a matter of that's just your generation. No, there's some serious demonic information and orientation being pumped to our children, and it's not just in the background. Just like we came to consciousness in large part by the environment, this environment they're growing up it's affecting them. It's affecting them already. We can see it. So yeah, it's a big difference. It's a whole different world, and it's many enemies within that we have to battle. But yeah, our period was really it was a golden age. It wasn't just a golden age of hip hop. It was a golden age of consciousness. And there have been several of them. That was just one of them, and hopefully there's another one coming up pretty soon. But that was definitely a golden age of consciousness in the music.
And you mentioned us, the music informed us, and you mentioned that the music informed us. I can recall hearing Stetson Sonic, Africa, when they're talking about apartheid.
Yep.
And for me, that was where I was getting my news and my information from. Do you remember records like that? Like, can you give us other examples of songs that had an impact on you, where you learned something that you didn't?
Oh, wow. I mean, wow. Yeah, Stetson Sonic. I mean, obviously, I mentioned Public Enemy already and KRS-One. But I mean, even the Self-Destruction, album, talking about violence. I mean, yeah, I think, I grew up on the East Coast of the U.S., and how I found out what was going on with the gang violence on the West Coast was through music, and the call to the end of that violence was through the music, and everybody got behind it. I mean, whether it was about apartheid, whether it was about violence in our community, whether it was about drugs, being pumped in our community, there's so many songs, so many groups of that period. I mean, obviously, you got the whole Jungle Brothers and Tribe Called Quest and that whole group. There's so many little cliques, come with different flavors. Your Brother Speech with Arrested Development. There's so many little cliques, but everybody was still vibrating on the same level of consciousness. Like, we are a valuable people, and that's a thing. It's a basic thing, right? That's missing. The idea that we are a valuable people, that our bodies are valuable, our men and women are valuable, manhood is valuable, womanhood is valuable. The future is valuable. It's worth working for, fighting for. It's not just your body is not just for somebody else's entertainment. There's actually some divinity associated with it. Of course, X-Clan really brought a lot of visualization to that. I mean, Lin Q, Lady of Rage. It was like, yeah. It was definitely a lot. It was and when I think back to that era, and like I said, I mean, my sound box or whatever, my music, it's still pretty much that same music. I can't get with this new stuff. I mean, obviously, some brothers have sort of, elevated. Brothers like Common have elevated a little bit. I remember Common when it was Common Sense, and before he was doing conscious music, but it was still hidden. You know what I mean? That first album, Can I Get $1? I played that over and over again. But it's like the era of that music, man. It's really sad that and the good thing is some young people in this generation, my youngest daughter in particular, she listens to that music. that's actually what she listens to is old classic hip hop.
Okay.
I mean, she be playing bumper records. I'm like, wait a minute, where you hear that? You know,
Mm.
so there is some degree of folks reaching back to that. But yeah, I mean, we were really blessed at that time, and we have to find a way to counteract all this, these sexy reds and whatever their names are that are everywhere that are being brought about, produced, and elevated by these white Jewish men for the most part, and made it at the center of attention everywhere. And while people who have beneficial messages, beneficial music, sounds are pushed aside, and they have a harder time even getting a platform. But it's something that we have to really talk about openly, because sometimes we feel that there's a need to have tolerance, but this stuff is intolerable. It's intolerable. It really is intolerable, and it definitely shouldn't be mainstream in our community. I mean, we know BET is not BET. We already know that. It's not by us. It's definitely not for us. But we need to take away the center stage these things have in our community, at the events that we have in our homes, wherever we have control. We need to take control of the type of entertainment that's pervading, because it's affecting even education, the what's considered to be acceptable. I mean, the type of illicit drug use that's become acceptable in our community is right there in the music. It's like drinking water. I mean, some communities you can't. Some communities you try to walk past. I mean, you don't get high by the time you get from one end of the block to the other. You don't even get high on, because they got all types of stuff out there.
Right.
That folks are doing. So it's really affecting the brains of our people, and we can't get our folks organized and doing work. And of course, that's the whole point. If their whole focus is getting distracted, where can I get my next fix?
Yeah, I could tell you a quick story. When I was 15, I had learned about the Black Panther Party for the first time. I didn't know what that was. I heard Chuck D on NYU, which is a college radio station here in New York City, and he was talking about how the Black Panther Party had influenced him and influenced his music. When I first heard that, I thought Black Panther Party, when he said party, I'm thinking where people play music and dance and party. Like, I didn't understand what that meant. But from listening to the music, I was able to understand, who and what the Black Panther Party was. Now, you got brother Byron Love in the chat. He says positive rap can make a comeback. If DJs, podcasts, shows, etc., just do it. Collectively, we should stop waiting for permission or validation to do our craft. Then he goes on to say, Sexy Red, Suki Hana, and the rest of the prostitutes are not asking. They are just giving us the swamp water as a flood. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, I absolutely agree. And I think we need to even change the way we talk about this type of music, because that's what it really is. It's porno music. We should just call it that. It's not for any other purpose. And it has a place in society, but it doesn't have it shouldn't have a central place in society. We ultimately have the power in terms of how what we consume as a people, because we know white folk are going to find the biggest coon out there to support, but I'm always concerned about what we consume, what we play, what we promote, what we elevate. And right now, it doesn't seem like I would guess the popular black media or mainstream black media is thinking about any of that. All they're thinking about is, who's giving them coin. I guess they, whatever kickbacks they get, whatever promos they get, whoever they, whatever they use to meet their bottom line. That's what they're thinking about. And I'm thinking about, what's the effect of this person that I have on my show, that I'm promoting their concert, giving them great tickets to, that I'm playing every 5 seconds. What's the effect of them on my community? and we have to find a way to hold Black media accountable. Even Black radio stations. Most of the radio stations that are that are the most central in our communities are oftentimes they're owned by Black people. Your Kathy Hughes and whatnot, and they're not always thinking about what exactly is that they're promoting on their station. So we have to hold Black media accountable. I've moved past the point of worrying about what white folk do, because they're gonna white folk. You know what I mean? They're gonna do what they're gonna do.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we have the power within ourselves, among ourselves, to change any reality we want, as long as we decide to do so and are willing to hold each other accountable in that process.
Yeah, brother Kamsu 9 Ether mentioned the Browder File, From N Words to God. He talked about Dr. Malachi Z. York books, NOI books, etc. Do you remember the time when having certain books was like having certain albums?
Right.
Like you had to have the Browder File, or you had to have Dr. Welsing's book. This was part of the culture. Do you remember that time when books were like albums?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my head I'm still in that era, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, my bookshelf is an essential part of how I think, and how I became, and for the circle of folks, it's key books, right? It's Yurugu, it's key books. Brother Amos Wilson, there was so many. It's one thing when you don't have the information, right? If nobody has taken the time to do the work, do the research, and put it together. It's another thing where it's there, but nobody's paying attention to it. And I don't even know if this generation reads for real. I don't know. I don't know if they read. I mean, that's not, and the attention span is going, smaller and smaller, with the type of media folks consume these days. So I'm not even sure folks are reading or what they're reading. I mean, I know what I read, and I know what folks around me read, but I don't know that this current generation, I don't know which number it is, which letter it is, I should say. But I'm not sure if they even read. So, I'm not sure they're gonna get to how you're underdeveloped Africa. They're not gonna, I don't know that they're even reading. So, so that's a whole other thing, But absolutely, books are critical. I mean, and I share books, and I share books when opportunities arise. There was a recent holiday in the celebrating the U.S. And the 4th of July or 4th of July, and there's one book, one of my favorite books there's two of them now, but one main one that I've been sharing for a long time is Slave Nation. How slavery united the colonies and led to the revolution. And this is not Black history. This is world history. This is American history. But there's a deliberate attempt to dumb down history and to use history as a weapon, as opposed to a tool to elevate people. If you really know the history of this country, you reckon you will be as offended by the American flag as the Confederate flag. When Black people get to that point, then we can talk. Black people are offended by the Confederate flag, what they should be. But the truth is, the American flag is just as offensive. The American Revolution was fought to maintain slavery. They saw what's happening in Europe. England had already banned slavery. The Somerset decision, which happened just a few years before the Revolution, was basically England saying that they were no longer going to support slavery in their colonies, and if a enslaved person was brought from the colonies to the U.S. to England, they'd be free, and the owners would have no control over them, and they were about to move towards abolition of slavery in the colonies. And that is what led the so-called founding fathers to revolt. It wasn't about some tea, right? It wasn't about some taxes. It was about them losing the primary engine of industry and the primary source of their wealth, which was the enslavement of African people. That's why they declared independence from England. Plain and simple. That book documents it, and other books document it. I mean, it's like really easy to understand, well documented, timelines really shown. And it's something that we, I think, as Black people, and I speak, speaking collectively in America, have a hard time accepting. So many of us, have the veteran badge because so many of us had to go to the military for either drafted or because we had to pay for education or just to have something to do after high school. So many of us, have a military record, and that makes it, or we have family members that do. That makes it very difficult for us to turn away from that red, white, and blue. I always remind folks, the Confederate flag and American flag, they're both red, white, and blue. Both of them are red, white, and blue, and there's a reason for that. So we need to change our relationship with this country, with this system, and every opportunity we have, we need to point people in the direction of information that will do that. Even when it's difficult information. I mean, I know, we're going to talk about Juneteenth. This sort of leads to that. Yes. But we'll get to that conversation when you're ready.
Yeah. So I learned recently, and I thought this was interesting. And if anyone's in the chat, if you want to look this up, I think this is interesting. There is a social science created by Europeans called agnotology. And the goal of agnotology is to deliberately create ignorance. And so I want to read this into the record. It says, agnotology, the study of deliberate ignorance or doubt that is induced by culture. It is a branch of social science that examines how ignorance or doubt about certain subjects is created. So they're using culture, our culture, to deliberately create ignorance among us. Do you think that what we see now as commercial rap music is them using our culture to deliberately facilitate ignorance among us?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And culture is the easiest way to get to people. I mean, it's culture and religion, and the two are not really separated. We think of them separately, but it's religion is part of culture, right? So if you make ignorant behavior and ignorant backward thinking, self-destructive behavior part of what you do, culture is what you do. That's what culture is. It's what you do. If you want to know what your culture is, look at yourself. That's your culture, right? So if you can alter what people do and make it self-destructive and make it something they don't have to think about because everybody around them is doing it, that's the environment they're in. That's the community they're in. That's what their friends are doing. That's what they're hearing. That's what they're listening to. That's what they're watching. You surround them with it, then it becomes normalized, even if it's abnormal. And that's exactly what's happening with this music that's being popularized by the entities that make money off of popularizing it, and the folks who I think in many cases knowingly participate. I mean, some of these folks, these artists, I'm putting that in quotes, know that they're just tools. They know they're not particularly talented, but they like the limelight, they like the money, and they're willing to sell. I mean, some of them will sell themselves anyway, so they figure we might as well sell ourselves in this way and make a whole bunch of money. I think a lot of them are conscious of what they're doing. They're just willing to do it, and they're willing to, they sold their soul to the devil, as you could say. But absolutely, I think it is clearly deliberate, and it is clearly working.
Yeah, I say propaganda works. That's why they use it against us. But the question is, how do we bring back that positive rap? Like, what do we do as consumers of the music that can help to bring back positive rap?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think that we need to continue to educate at every opportunity that we have. I think that, well, my observation is that, society lives in cycles. Our community lives in cycles. There's always going to be ebbs and flow. There's no such thing as the masses uh, gaining consciousness. It's never happened. But it can appear to be that just by the zeitgeist of that particular moment. The pieces coming together that bring about that positive culture that promotes self-love, that is not self-destructive, that is about elevation. We can continue to educate and promote positive things in our community, and eventually, I mean, it's not a specific science, but eventually we get back to another cycle. And this is probably unavoidable in the sense that you always, whenever you get, the greatest level of consciousness, at least appearing in the people, at least it being apparent in the culture that they're practicing, you're probably due for a fall because the system always self-corrects. So it's something that's gonna come in terms of consciousness and the music, and it'll take different forms, and maybe maybe even different. It may not even be hip hop, maybe something else. But the cycle continues to go. But our responsibility as conscious people is to continue to educate and elevate, even when people aren't ready for it. Even when they're not tuned into it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we need to do a better job at taking control of the education and guiding the development of our children, because I think that's where it begins. You got Byron Love in the chat says we need to bring back shame. I feel like a lot of the music now is promoting diminished morals, and people are doing shameful things with no shame. So do you agree with Brother Byron Love? We need to bring back this concept of shame?
Absolutely. I mean, and I've been saying that for years, even before this music that's become popular now. We saw a trend where you couldn't say that being a single mother wasn't a badge of honor. You couldn't ask somebody, like I mean, you could ask somebody who's pregnant, how's your husband doing? You know what I mean? It became a point where the idea of a black family being a man, a woman, and children that are in a marriage. And we got folks confused about what marriage is and what marriage isn't, and that whole confusion. You being used as a way of minimizing it and making it seem like it's something that is not. But all that was all towards the effort of destroying actually the concept of marriage. And I was venture to say most young people who are coming into marrying age now don't even imagine themselves ever getting married. So it's about the morality of our community, the morality that's been diminished, and the diminished morality being accepted. And once you do that, once you break down the morality of the community, then you can't have shame. There's no shame. Everybody do what they want to do. You want to, you want to do the most atrocious thing, live the most atrocious lifestyle. You want to, be with a different person every hour of the day. You want to go to the club and black out and wake up in whatever bed you in the next day and do it again and no one has anything to say to you. This is the society we live in now. It's like nobody has the right to even ask you, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing it? what's the responsibility that you have to the young girls and young boys that are watching you do it? I mean, you know, it's absolutely something that we need to bring back, but it's not just in one genre. It's as a whole. I think as a whole, you know, we have become more individualistic, which is a rot that comes from being in this society. It's like we're in it, so we're rotting as a result of the society itself being rotted. With, you know, America capitalism is all about individualism, and our natural sense of collectiveness that Black people have is not really consistent with that individualism. So the more that individualism, you know, rots in us, the harder it is for us to hold each other accountable. And yeah, I mean, then shame who? I mean, who even cares, you know, what you think, right? So we absolutely need to bring back accountability. I mean, I will put it in that way. We need to bring out accountability on all levels. And when you have accountability, then, you know, you can talk about, you know, shame. You can talk about, you know, holding folks, you know, feet to the fire. But right now, we don't have any accountability. We don't have a sense of accountability. We have a sense of you do what you want to do, and you know, and you know, if you want to do it, it's good. If you want to do it, it's okay. You know.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I think somebody in the chat that is saying that perhaps we need to boycott. You know, I'm for that. You know, boycotting the radio stations. There's Lawrence W in the chat. She says we have to boycott, dismiss all negativity, support, and invest in positivity. Do you think a boycott of the radio stations might bring about an end to some of this disagreeable rap music?
I mean, in theory, but you know, the people that need to boycott it won't. You know, that's always a problem, right? They're not counting on conscious people to be their audience, so they'll still get their audience. Well, we need to create alternatives. I do believe that we need to create alternatives for folks to listen to, and try to elevate those alternatives as much as possible. Because, you know, unfortunately, we are in a consumer-driven society. You know, it's one thing to tell somebody don't do, but if you're not giving them something to do, then they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. It's going to be hard enough to get them to change to start with, but if you don't give them alternatives, we should be building alternative media that is focused on elevating our people and the state of our people, as opposed to the money model, which is more about, you know, what's the biggest corporate sponsor I can get, and so on and so forth. So boycott is one thing, but then you have to create an alternative. You know, I use this is an example. This is a visual example, and it has some lessons. You know, some lessons associated with it. You know, one of the biggest, most popular, probably the most successful boycotts in American history would be the Montgomery bus boycott. And you know, that came about, you know, because of the level of discrimination, you know, that Black people were experiencing all along, you know, the East Coast and the South. And we got to the point where we were tired of it. And when Black people decided to boycott, they had to create a system for folks to get around. Because you boycott the buses, that's how folks got to work. That's how they got to school. That's how they got around. So because of that, we created a system of ride shares, essentially. And eventually, some of those ride shares transform into actual bus companies. So the only reason why the boycott was successful, and I'll put that in quotes, successful, we'll talk about that, was that an alternative was created. The masses of people were not all of a sudden conscious about, oh, we got to boycott. No, they were given an alternative, and the alternative didn't dehumanize them. So they took the alternative, and there were successful Black-owned bus companies that travel, you know, all over the country that were created during that period. Unfortunately, and this is the lesson part that we got to figure out how to avoid. When the bus companies, the white bus companies, started losing so much money, that they took notice, and they were like, it's no longer to our benefit to, have this policy of discrimination on our buses. That we're going to lift all these, these rules we had that penalized, black people and segregated them on the buses. Once they let black folk, once they lifted those rules, those Jim Crow practices, and black folks went back to those bus companies, both local and interstate, they abandoned the ones that were created. The black ones were created. The ones that they depended on for many, many years. Folks don't realize how long the bus boycotts, happened. It was going for a long time. There were a lot of businesses established by black people to meet that need. Unfortunately, the white folk were able to seduce us back just by saying, just by opening the door, right? And we abandoned the businesses that we created in the process. So was it a success? Well, the boycott did achieve what we set out initially, but at the end of the day, we lost what we created in the process. We lost the opportunity to grow and to really bring self-sustaining prosperity to our community, which we had in our hand. We had it, we had it in our grasp. It was just for us to hold on to it, which we failed to. But my point is that unless you create a viable alternative, the boycott does nothing.
Agreed. So just because I like solutions on this program, we like to focus on solutions. So you said the way we educate and socialize our children has to change. So it's a good idea for us to do that ourselves. Boycotting works, as you just mentioned, and I agree with that. And then, artists have to make and put out positive rap. And to expound on what you're saying, we have to support those artists that do that positive rap. Now, you had mentioned Juneteenth. I want to circle back to that. The great Omawali Malcolm X once said, the system of white supremacy will only give us symbolic victories and never give us real justice or economic equality. Myself and no one I know asked for Juneteenth to be a federal holiday. And so it seems to me as if Juneteenth is yet another symbolic victory. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was Joe Biden's first. It was his first. First. I'm not sure what you call it. First thing he did to make black people clap and say, "Look, you voted for me. Thank you. This is what you get. Not the Voters' Rights Act. Not the George Floyd Act, not all the other stuff that black folk were actually lobbying for. It was just symbolic, and I've celebrated Juneteenth. Well, I celebrated Juneteenth, as early as, I would say the late 80s. I heard about it, and I think that's around the same time it sort of became more of a national celebration among conscious people. Of course, it's been celebrated in Galveston, Texas, for some time. Most people, first of all, don't understand what it is. So that's sort of, as a history buff, that's sort of what gets in my crawl, is that people think that it has to do with it has to do with the last people that were enslaved in America getting their freedom or being able to have their freedom. If they understand that much, some don't even understand it to that level. But of course, we know that after the Emancipation Proclamation and after the 13th Amendment, it took a long time for a lot of communities in America to become aware or to be, even if they were aware, to be allowed to have that freedom. And some of this is not necessarily even, hard to find. I remember that there was a community in 1967 in the South, that's when they actually, there was sort of a remote community. But I think it was in Time magazine and Essence magazine at the time, where they were finally informed, I guess is a way to put it, that that slavery was over, and that the white masters that had owned their ancestors for generations could no longer tell them what to do. They could actually leave the land. It could actually, they were actually free to do what they wanted to do. And this is in the 60s. So you're talking about, something that happened, in the 1800s, and but also that every community where there were black people had their own little mini Juneteenth, if you will, because it wasn't like the law was passed or the amendment was passed and all of a sudden black people were free. It took years and years and years. So we need to understand, first of all, that it was black troops that liberated the folks in Galveston. Even after the Union soldiers showed up, it took black troops to actually enforce it, right? So a lot of the history around that is not being taught, and the fact that the same white folk that were enslaving and continue to benefit from enslavement of our people get the day off.
Right.
For us liberating ourselves, because we refused to remain slaves, because we were having so many revolts all over this country, that they could not sustain that system anymore, because we put on the Union uniform and fought, to liberate ourselves, because it led to, through steps and steps of led to black people gaining liberation, at least physical liberation from this country, that those same descendants of these white folk get to stay home and barbecue or do whatever they want to do in their house in celebration. It's crazy. So no, we ain't asked for no holiday.
Okay, so now I'm noticing in your background you have a red, black, and green flag. Perhaps you could see that behind me in my background. They gave us a Juneteenth flag that's red, white, and blue. So I feel like they jumped ahead of the red, black, and green flag. What is your opinion on the Juneteenth flag?
Yeah, I'm not really clear on the history of that. I believe it came from somebody from the Texas Galveston community, and if you're sending yourself in Texas and sending yourself in America, and that's your consciousness, and I can see where such a flag, we know the red, black, and green are the universal black colors. We know that. So that means that the flag wasn't centered on us. It was centered on Texas. It was centered on the American idea. Like I said, all these red, white, and blue flags, they're just iterations of the same thing. So there certainly wasn't a consultation of those of us who had been celebrating Juneteenth about what the flag was going to be, but that's what's been promoted, and I've seen several versions of Juneteenth. I'm not sure if there's actually an official one, but the popularized one is I believe based on the Texas flag, and based on the community in Galveston, Texas.
Okay, so we're going to pivot away from Juneteenth in the last 12 minutes we have left. I would like to talk about Appeal Inc. What is Appeal Inc.? And then give us some updates on some of the things that you've done.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So Appeal is a black empowerment organization. We are an international organization, and we have members all over the world. We are based in the DC area, but that's not really base is probably loose, even though a lot of our activities do happen in DC. But we have members all over the world, all over the country. More recently, over the last 5 years, we've brought in our membership in terms of we have members on both coasts and other countries as well. It's all about the empowerment of African people. Appeal is an acronym which stands for Association of People for Pan-Africanist Economic Advancement Through Leverage. It's the idea that we don't need to ask or beg anybody for anything. That everything that we need to elevate ourselves and to ensure prosperity in our community, we already have. We just have to organize. Our problem is a lack of organization. We have resources locally, nationally, globally to do everything that we want to do. You know, like Marcus Garvey said, up you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. We can accomplish what we will. Once we recognize that, then we just have to begin to plan to do it. And that's what Appeal is doing. We are working a plan, and we have a plan to elevate African people, Black people, wherever we are in the world, so that we are the masters of our domain. We are the ones directing prosperity in our community. Our mission is to organize and strategically utilize the vast resources of our people, locally, nationally, and globally, to facilitate economic empowerment, educational enrichment, to produce self-sufficient, prosperous communities. And we have several platforms towards that. One obvious one is education. Needed more so maybe than other times, it seems, in this country, where education is being, dumbed down and history is being dumbed down. We need to have a proper orientation of consciousness. We don't have the benefit of KRS-One and Public Enemy pumping on the radio stations, folks listening to now. So we have to educate our people through other means. So we have workshops that deal with a variety of topics, historical, cultural, political, to give it proper orientation. As a matter of fact, our next workshop, which it hasn't been put up on the site yet, but it will be, it's going to be on the 27th of July. We have Sister Marimba Ani will be opening up this particular workshop series, talking about her work, right? Her collective work, and it's going to be powerful. But that really leads off the series, and there's going to be a lot. We're focused on healing for this particular workshop series, but throughout, we do a lot of different topics. We bring a lot of notable people. You mentioned Brother Tony Browder. He's a board member of Appeal, and he'll be doing a program later on this series as well. So first, we have to bring the education to our people. We try to make it as convenient as possible. Most of our workshops are virtual these days, which has allowed people to join from all over. We also do financial literacy workshops. It's really important that we understand how money works, how it affects us, what our relationship is with the money that's around us. How we can change our relationship with the system so that it benefits us. How we can help our families and our community to elevate themselves. And then on top of the education piece, through all the different, areas of people activity, we also have a Black Saturday Co-op, which partners with, Black farmers and Black manufacturers from all over the world, really, primarily the country, to produce products that Black people use on a daily basis, not specialty stuff, but stuff that you're going to use. Companies like Good Vibes, they do cleaning products. True, they do, detergent. Freedom Paper, they do, paper products. Azuli, they do, soaps. And so, we have Garner's Garden. They produce oral care products and deodorants. And so there are Black people making all these things. There's absolutely no reason why you go to Walmart or some other place and buy some product that's probably made in Israel and use it on your body when Black people are using it. I'm making it for you to use it. And we know white folk ain't gonna patronize it. We know they don't have to declare a boycott of Black businesses. You're never gonna see that because it doesn't need to happen. They do it every day. It's their way of life. We need to make that our way of life. make it our way of life not to patronize white folk on any level whatsoever, regardless of what. If there's a product that's out there that you need that's not available, that's your opportunity to create it. That's your opportunity. If you need it, it's not available, you're not the only one that needs it. So you got a customer base right there, right? So the Black Cider Co-op is all about promoting Black manufacturing and using what we make and making what we use. And on top of that, our centerpiece, I guess you could say, is organizing of a national Black credit union, one that's not based on region or being in the military or a job or whatever these other credit unions are based on, just based on membership, based on you being a Black person, a person of African descent that wants to promote the elevation and prosperity of African people. I mean, that's it. You can be anywhere and do that. We've been able to raise almost $300,000 for the credit union. We like to get to 500,000, right? But we obviously come a long way. But we're now in the process of the details of the credit union. We're doing surveys of members, of formulating the structure of it. So we're in the nitty-gritty of it. We've been at this for some time, and we appreciate the support we have gotten with that. We also have the Lasana K. Mack think tank, which is named after the founder of Appeal, and we have several other programs and activities and platforms throughout the year, both locally, nationally, and globally. And we are talking about what needs to be done, and then we are creating the vehicles to achieve that thing. And that's what's necessary. We need to duplicate ourselves as much as possible so that wherever Black people are, they have access to the knowledge, they have access to these businesses, enterprises, they have access to the professionals. So we have a lot of really talented people on every aspect of life in our community, and we need to have access to that I would say that human knowledge base, right? We are our greatest asset. They say a man, a woman that has a community has wealth. Our community is our wealth. So we need to connect wherever we can, network as much as we can, and continue to create opportunities, vehicles to truly bring about prosperity among our people.
Now, Brother Kelechi, I appreciate your knowledge. Do you remember years ago there was a rap group called Funk Dubious? Do you remember Funk Dubious?
Yes, absolutely. I used to bang them a lot.
Yeah, they had a song that said, "I drop jewels like a thief with a hole in my pocket."
Wow.
That's you, brother. You dropping jewels like a thief with a hole in your pocket. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You said Appeal Inc. is doing an event on July the 27th. If people want to view that, can they go online? Is it an in-person event?
Yes, it's gonna be a virtual event. And you go to appealinc.org. The registration for that particular event hasn't opened up yet, but it will open up in the next couple of days. And we're going to have a slew of events. Our big annual program is on September 29th, which you can actually register for now. That's going to be a hybrid program. Folks who can come to DC can come and be in person. Folks who cannot, can join virtually as well. That's going to be that's our big Founders Day program. That's on September 29th. But the workshop, which is going to start with Sister Marimba, going into that period. Most of it is going to be virtual. Some of it is going to be in person. But that very first one will be virtual. You'll be able to attend, wherever you are. You can also go to our website and join the mailing list. That way you get information about what's coming up. But appealinc.org, you can go there and find all the information about Appeal, all the different platforms that we have, all the ways you can participate. You can join, you can donate, you can learn. We have a Buy Black page which lists all the different places where you can find Black businesses in your community, including We Buy Black, and there's a whole bunch of them. Official Black Wall Street. There's ones for different regions, like there's a Baltimore, BeMoreBlack.com. So a whole bunch of them. We have that listed in our Buy Black page on our website as well. So definitely appealinc.org. You can get all the information you want to know about Appeal.
Okay, and can people join appealinc.org by going to that website?
Absolutely. You go to appealinc.org. You click on join, and it'll walk you through it. It's a pretty simple process. And we're always looking for more, conscious, minded people who are not just willing to talk about it, but be about it. In other words, we need workers. We want to actually get involved with any of the things I'm talking about. You can get involved. You can literally join and join the various committees. We have committees dealing with all these different things. They meet, they work, and we're always looking for able-bodied, serious people who want to be part of the solution. And we're very much looking for that, open to that, and we invite you all to join if you're not already a member. Appealinc.org.
Yeah, I will send everybody in the chat because we got some pretty smart people in the chat. I would send everyone in the chat to appealinc.org. You definitely want to get on and join that. Brother Kelechi, we're going to let you go, but I do want to bring you back to talk about the event in September.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, most definitely. So thank you again for joining us, brother, and we'll be reaching out to you again soon, okay?
Thank you. And you all can also find Appeal on social media, all the platforms. It's Appeal Inc. and all the platforms, Appeal Inc.
Appeal Inc. Appealinc.org. Brother Kelechi, thanks again for joining us, brother.
All right, thank you.
All right, brother, peace. Yeah, that was